Welcome to the Leadership Excellence Podcast. I'm your co-host, George Strachilis, and with me, as always, is the insightful Dr. Tom Lawless.
Great to be here, George. Dr. Leiker's focus on culture and development are more relevant than ever.
For our listeners, we want you to go deeper and access all of Dr. Leiker's lessons. Go to ow64.com and download our app. Let's dive into this week's essential lesson on developing leadership skills.
I'm Jeff Leiker, author of The Toyota Way. I've been studying Toyota for as long as I've been a professor at University of Michigan, last 35 years. In the early days, we went to Japan, we saw factories, we saw a lot of cool stuff that in the case of Toyota is part of the Toyota production system. And these tools like Kanban and like pulling a cord and stopping the line are key to Toyota's philosophy, but they're not Toyota's philosophy. The broader philosophy is a long-term perspective on adding value to society and customers by developing exceptional people who continually improve the products and services of Toyota. That has come to be known as lean management. Womack and Jones called it lean thinking. And it is a different paradigm, a different way of thinking than traditional mass production thinking that focuses on command and control rules and procedures to make each operation the most efficient possible. Toyota looks across the value stream to create the best value for the customer. So it's a much broader systems perspective. I partnered with George on a course on developing lean leadership. What we observed at Toyota was that the leaders really embodied the principles, the values, the philosophy of the Toyota Way and taught that every day. And that way of thinking was less common outside of Toyota. The way of thinking is embodied in respect for people and continuous improvement, Toyota's version of the Toyota Way. The challenge then was to try to teach others how to develop those leadership skills. We wanted to do it efficiently, and one way of doing that was the use of the internet, an online course. But we were concerned that in online courses, you get a lot of talking heads like me, but very little practice. And really, it's the combination of the idea and then the practice, the disciplined practice to make it a habit that really changes your leadership style. To get both those elements, practice and concepts, we broke the overall model of leadership development at Toyota into pieces. And for each piece, we teach segments with tests, and then we ask you to practice, but practicing alone may mean that you're practicing the wrong things and developing bad habits. So we ask you to practice with a virtual coach, and we have a set of excellent coaches. And step by step, you learn something, you apply it, you get feedback from your coach, you take corrective action and try again. And repeatedly over time, you develop real skills. We're very proud of that course. And we've had great feedback from those who've gone all the way through it. And we hope you're next. Good luck on your journey to lean leadership excellence.
The question we really ask in this course is, what is lean leadership and what does it take to develop it? So what I'll be doing is over a series of sessions explaining what we learned and the model we came up with. As background, I'm going to be giving an overview of the Toyota Way, the 4P models, as I call it, and that will provide a context then for understanding Toyota leadership. At the very end of the Toyota Way, you'll see a reference to Jim Collins' work. In fact, what we talk about in that chapter, what he calls level 5 leadership. In fact, when I was writing that last chapter and about to put the book to bed, a PhD student called me and said, "Have you read Good to Great?" And I hadn't. I was busy writing my book. And he then said, "You've got to read about level 5 leadership because it sounds exactly like Toyota leadership." So I read it. I added a little part in the last chapter, and then later I had a chance to read the book in more detail, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is Toyota, this is Toyota, this is Toyota. Now what he was describing was not Toyota. He was describing great American companies, and these great American companies outperform their competitors dramatically over decades financially, the stock price. And he asked the question, what makes them great? What's the difference between these good companies that do okay and the great companies? These are the list of characteristics I synthesized from that book. And again, as I went through these, they perfectly described what I was trying to communicate with the Toyota way. Starting with a focus on customers, Toyota talks about customer first. He talks about a passion for delivering value to the customers. And what he says is that the great companies start there. They don't start with how much money do we make this quarter. They don't start with what's our next product that's going to be a smash hit. They start with who's our customer and what can we do to solve their problems, to add value to them in a way that they don't expect, in a way that's superior to our competitors. So the customer is always the focus. They also have internally a set of core values, and the core values go beyond short-term profits. And the values have to do with, number one, satisfying customers, why we're in business. Number two, what kind of environment do we want to have for our team members so that they can grow, so that they can have a good quality of life, so we can make our team members better when they leave here than when they came into this company. And then they have a commitment, and the commitment starts with the CEO, who in the great companies was often the founder of, like, for example, Walt Disney in the case of Disney Corporation. And the founder always is focused on building something that's a legacy. How can I build something great that will live way beyond me and will be my legacy? And that's the enterprise. So you could say that, all of us live and die, but some part of us lives on. And for these CEOs, their legacy, what they want to live on, is that great company. And they want that great company to continue to be great. And to do that, they're absolutely obsessive about building leaders who can succeed them, who are just as passionate as they are about the company, about the customers, about the kind of culture that they've created. So it's very hard to develop that level of understanding, passion, commitment if you simply pluck a CEO from another company who drove up their stock price recently. The senior leaders need to commit for their life to the business. That doesn't mean they can't have a life outside of work, but you probably have noticed that as you go up in the company, people spend more time at the office, more time in the business, and somewhat less time with their families, so there is some compromise there. They're obsessive about studying and adapting to the environment. The word studying is very important. So if you're a Walt Disney, for example, you have competitors in your industry who are, for example, theme parks, or they're making films, and you know everything about them. You know what they're thinking, how they're thinking, and probably what they're going to do next. And you don't care about the auto industry, and you don't care about semiconductors, you don't care about hospitals, you care about your business. You're not a generic plug-and-play CEO who can go any place and run anything. You're an expert at your particular business. They also use the term and thinking as opposed to or thinking. Again, to me, a very Toyota way concept that's key to Kaizen, which is that if you ask a leader who's, say, coaching you to do a Kaizen, and you say, we can either have productivity or we can have quality, the leader is going to say, why not both? What makes you think that you need to trade off quality for productivity? Please achieve both. And that leader believes that it's possible to achieve both. And then they believe that because they've done it so many times in their own lives. Innovation by experimenting and learning, and that kind of blew me away because the standard paradigm at that time of innovation was the lone inventor. And the lone inventor would come up with ideas, they'd be brilliant ideas, then you prototype them, and then you bring them to market, and there's a commercialization process, but the starting point is always the one brilliant idea that the one genius has. And what Jim Collins was saying is that in the great companies, the way they learn is by doing, by trying, by experimenting. In Lean, we know about Gemba, and Gemba means the place where the work is going on, where the customers are using our cars, where we're shipping materials. It's a place where it's happening, and that's really the place where you should be experimenting and innovating. An unwavering belief in the value of capable, motivated people. What Toyota will say is that people are our only appreciating asset. In other words, people are the only part of this company that gains value instead of depreciates in value. Every other part of the business, the equipment, the energy we use, every part of the business over time will depreciate, and you have to constantly renew it. Whereas people actually get smarter, they develop higher levels of skill, and a 10-year person is more valuable normally than an equivalent 1-year person. What that suggests is that you need to invest in people for the long term, because you don't get the 10-year person unless, number one, you can keep them around, and number two, you invest in developing them. They don't naturally develop wonderful skills by themselves. And then finally, the result of all that is a strong, coherent, cohesive culture. By strong, what we mean is that the culture, the values, the beliefs are widely shared at all levels and across the company. And to some degree, a piece of what that founder, what that CEO has, that passion for the customer, that passion for the company, to some degree, that filters down to everybody, not to the same level as the senior leadership. Coherent means it's really clear and understandable, and if you talk to different people, you'll get a similar story. And cohesive means that people feel bound together like a team, even if they don't know each other, because we all work for this great enterprise, and we all have the same customers we're serving.
All right. Welcome back to Leadership Excellence Podcast. And today we're going to dive into what it really means to go from good to great. George, let's start here. When we talk about great companies, what separates them from just good?
Yeah, great question, Tom. One of the powerful insights shared by Jeff was how closely the characteristics of great companies and good to great aligned with what Toyota had already been practicing for decades. And here's the big idea. Great companies start with the customer. Actually, I think he put it, which I was really happy with, passion for the customer, right? That passion. They don't start with quarterly earnings. They don't start with the next flashy product. They begin by asking, who is our customer? What problem can we help them solve? And how can we deliver value in a way they don't expect? Also, they compared themselves to their competitors. How can we deliver value in a way they don't expect that our competitors can't deliver it? Right? So at Toyota, it's customer first. That's not a slogan. It's a decision filter. Every action, every improvement, every innovation is grounded in delivering superior value. And that mindset shifts leadership completely. You stop managing for short-term results and start leading for long-term impact. Tom, that leads us to a deeper question. If the customer focus is the starting point, what keeps the focus consistent over decades?
Well, that's where the long-term commitment comes in. One of the defining characteristics of great companies is leadership that thinks beyond themselves. Founders and CEOs in these organizations are building a legacy, not just chasing stock prices. They're asking, how do we build an enterprise that's going to last? How do we develop leaders who can carry this forward? And how do we create something that outlives us? And that's different from parachuting in a CEO because they've improved earnings someplace else. How often have we seen this where a CEO, heck, in some cases, they fail in one company and another large company will bring them in, let alone when they do good. Great leaders are deeply committed to the business. They study it obsessively. They understand their competitors. They understand their customers. They understand their environment. And here's something I love from this discussion: the idea of and thinking instead of or thinking. Not productivity or quality, but productivity and quality. George, how does that mindset connect to innovation?
Right. It connects directly, Tom. So for years, innovation was described as the work of a lone genius. Think of it like a brilliant inventor who Eureka created the invention. But that's not how great companies operate. Great companies innovate by experimenting and learning. They try, they test, they adjust, they retry. And this happens at what Lean calls the Gemba, the place where value is created or the place where things are happening. Not in conference rooms, not in abstract strategy decks, but where customers use the product, where the work is performed, and where real problems surface. Where leaders go to Gemba, they see reality, and when they experiment there, they build knowledge. This is a continuous improvement in action. It's Kaizen. And that's why and thinking matters so much. A lean leader doesn't accept the trade-off of quality versus productivity. They believe both can be achieved. And because they've seen it happen through disciplined experimentation, they coach and develop others in the same way. They coach their students to say, look, you can do both. Think of it like this. Otani, who is a baseball player, he was told for years, you can only hit or you can only pitch. You got to pick one. And he refused to do it. He's like a lean leader when it comes to this concept. He does both now. And he's actually so good at both, it makes you wonder why people haven't done it before. It's because they were pigeonholed, one or the other. Can you imagine what the and thinking is going to do for the world when everybody starts doing this? So, Tom, that experimentation requires something deeper, doesn't it? It requires people.
Absolutely, George. And one of the most powerful statements in this entire discussion is people are the only appreciating asset. Machines depreciate, buildings depreciate, technology becomes obsolete, but people, when developed, become more valuable over time. A 10-year team who's been coached, trained, and challenged is exponentially more capable than anyone who just started. That means leadership isn't just about managing processes, it's about developing human capital. And here's a statistic that really stands out. It takes 10 times longer to improve people than to improve a process. That's humbling. You can redesign workflow in weeks. Developing leader, that's years. And the sad part is that most places anymore don't pay for somebody to go to training. They think that because somebody went to college, they're a leader, or that they know what's going on. They don't. So if you want sustainable excellence, you invest in people and develop your team for the long term. George, how does that investment shape company culture?
Yeah, you know what? It's everything to company culture. So when leaders consistently focus on customers, practice experimentation at the Gemba, where things are happening, and invest in people, the result is a strong, coherent, cohesive culture. That's what Jeff said, and I'm just thinking, wow. So let's break that down. He says strong means the values are shared across all levels in the organization, top to bottom, left to right. Coherent means the message is clear. You talk to different people and hear the same story, and everybody's part of the same team, which is what cohesive is. So cohesive is people feel connected. like they're part of something meaningful, not just, make the numbers, hit the targets. And culture isn't accidental. It's built through consistent leadership behavior, clear values that go beyond the short term, and long-term commitment, and of course daily coaching. That's why we're in it, Tom, right? So when leaders focus on people development, that passion filters down, it becomes part of the DNA of the company, and that's the real shift from good to great. It's not about heroic leader, it's not about a leadership system. That's really what it's all about.
That's powerful, George. So today we covered three major ideas. Start with the customer and deliver unexpected value. Innovate through experimentation at the Gemba, embracing and thinking. And develop people as your only appreciating asset to build strong, cohesive cultures. This isn't theory, it's a roadmap. And as we've discussed, leadership isn't learned by listening alone. It's developed through doing, through deliberate practice, reflection, and coaching. Leadership isn't a destination, it's a journey.
Developing any skill isn't about how much you listen. It's about how much you practice. For every 1 hour of learning, so listening to this podcast for 1 hour, it takes many hours. I would suggest about 20 hours of actually doing the work to truly improve. So the real question is, what are you going to put into practice this week? Tom and I will introduce the questions that will help you think about what you can begin practicing right away. We invite our coaches to join and engage with the question, whether it's through their experience or things for you to think about as the listener.
Well, first question, many companies focus heavily on hitting quarterly numbers. If your company truly put customers first, ahead of short-term profits, what would you do differently starting tomorrow?
This is actually something that there was a comment made on the earlier about the concept of having passion for the customer. I think that was coming from Toyota, most likely. I was at a breakfast this morning. It was about the state of healthcare in our province. And one of the questions that was asked was, there's a lot of problems and delays and things in healthcare that a lot of people aren't happy with. And there's a lot of people that leave the province to go work in healthcare in other provinces. But there was also leaders present that had worked in different provinces and territories and have come back to Manitoba to work here. And they were asked the reason why would they come back. And they said that the people here, they have a passion for the patient. So it's sort of the culture and the people here is sort of what made the difference and why they can improve and do things that are really difficult to do in a smaller province. It came down to sharing that passion for the patient. So it was interesting that it had that commonality. And if we think about the question that you just asked about, if like, what is there something that you could do tomorrow? Like if I didn't have that focus on customers or the end user of things, something I could do tomorrow is just ask one person, just ask one existing customer or someone in the market, a friend, a colleague, anyone, just start with one person to ask them what they think about it or what they've experienced and then listen to what they have to say.
One of the things that we promote is the concept of value. What is value according to the Toyota perspective? What the customer is willing to pay for. Introducing this concept is because if we become customer centric, focusing what the final customer is willing to pay. What is he asking you? The requirement that he's asking you to meet is where we need to be focusing. Most likely in big processes or services when you have many instances when you work with the information or any service or product that you make. If you focus on the customer starting today, focusing what is value, what is the customer willing to pay for, and then define activities that add value, activities that doesn't add value, activities that doesn't add value that requires, and all these concepts that we need to clarify so we can focus on the 7 ways and eliminate all these opportunities.
Jose, that made me think of different ways that customers pay might not necessarily always be with money, but it could also be with time, or they might pay with frustrations or pain points of things that could be fixed just with simply better communication or other ways of adding value that don't necessarily result in them having to pay money for that.
All right, the next question for our listeners is think about your customers. When was the last time you asked, how can we surprise our customers by giving them more value than they expect? So, very interesting question. I'd like to start us off on this. Like, for example, what I do as a matter of service, because I service at work and service at home. That's one thing the Harada method teaches is I record our sessions and I give the customer a lot more that they don't ask for. I give them a video of our sessions. I give them a transcription. Based on the questions they have, I even elaborate on some of the things they could be doing. And I don't do it for me, I do it for them so that they're excited and they're happy. So even part of my service, I give them and I surprise them with something that nobody else does. So, any other thoughts on what you could do to surprise your customers?
That reminds me of back probably 20 some odd years ago. I worked with George on helping us document our process. And we looked at the way that we did things and the way that we wanted to do things. And we were definitely over processing the things that we were doing, like if it was to build a website, for example. We wanted to do everything so well that the cost to do it that way was prohibitive to anybody actually being able to pay for it, right? So we had all these ideas about what we wanted our product to be, and it was going to be the best in the world. But there was no clients in our city that could afford that, right? So we had to peel it back. So I think understanding the quality of the product you deliver, and even if there's a client you take on, it might be a nonprofit or a charity, that you say, you know what, we're not going to reduce our standard because they can't afford and we're giving them a discount. We're going to deliver our quality standard of work, whatever that is. And we might then manage expectations by telling them about 80% of it. So the 20% that meets our minimum standard to them is a surprise and delight moment. But it wasn't. But if we didn't deliver them, it would actually hurt the quality standard that we want to be known for. So perhaps it's kind of making sure you know yourself really well and where you want to be positioned in the market and the type of product and service and experience you want to deliver. But then just don't tell the customer in advance of all of the things they're going to experience in order to deliver your minimum standard.
Yeah, so I think, George, this is really highlighting the starting point is the customer's needs, and really identifying what is the problem that you're solving for the customer, putting yourself in the customer's shoes and seeing the world through their eyes, and you're kind of doing that when you're providing that video. You're putting yourself in the customer's shoes, saying what would be really helpful to me would be a copy of the video. Yes, I can provide that. So I think it keeps for me coming back to putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, rather than I've got a product and I need to be pushing this into the marketplace. And all these things are a matter of degrees too, by the way. I mean, I hear what Jose is saying about the forms of waste, and I understand that. But again, just in summary, I think it's being customer centric is putting yourself in their perspective, in their world, and then addressing what the problems they have and what they need addressing.
Yeah, well, and this one hits home, right? Leaders often believe they must choose between improving quality or improving productivity. Now, I know in manufacturing, we run into this a lot. What have you guys had to do? What have you guys done really to try to go around this and get both done instead of just one?
I mean, that's a great debate, right? But remember, in the eyes of Toyota, safety first, right? That's absolutely. And then remember that quality is built at the source. So this is easy to say, probably not too easy to understand, right? If all the operators are listening to manufacturing, everybody who touches a product or information. They build quality at their own process, and then we can focus on the efficiencies, right? We can focus how to streamline, eliminating all the waste, eliminating all the obstacles, so we can streamline the product or the information, whatever the case might be. But safety first, quality is built at the source, and then the efficiency will come.
Yeah, I would have thought the starting point is making sure you've got really clear standards. And so it's really clear what you're trying to achieve to meet customer needs and documenting them as part of your QMS. And so that becomes a non-negotiable, or so to speak, but that's what you're trying to achieve. So that's the starting point from where I would sit. After obviously your safety considerations, then it's about productivity to achieve that standard and the specification that you're trying to meet.
I think that everything starts with quality. Like, you want to make sure that you have a quality product, you're delivering a quality service in the beginning. I think that that's what's most important. And then once you have once you have proof that, or evidence that your product or your service is quality, I think that from that point on, that's where you kind of work on the productivity, making sure that just kind of looking at the checks and balances, making sure that you're running an efficient process. But I think that everything should start with quality first, because if you're delivering a bad product, it doesn't matter how productive you are, because nobody's going to be interested. Nobody's going to be wanting to purchase or work with you.
Vance, I was having the same thought of maybe getting quality figured out first before you look at productivity. And it also brings back the comment George had just made about AI. And I'm in a AI cohort that we meet every couple weeks. And we were just talking about this today, about how there's so many different tasks that are performed by humans that AI could do faster, and some of the tasks that they could do with more accuracy. And it doesn't mean use AI just because it'll save time, right? If it hurts the quality and it brings it below the minimum standard, you can't do it, right? No matter how better the productivity could be. But if you can increase productivity and maintain your minimum standard, or potentially even increase the quality by using AI and faster. So I think you're bang on with making sure the quality is kind of number one, maybe after safety, Jose, right? Safety, then quality, and then productivity.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of what you just said, I'm thinking of an example of one of my friends sent me a video today of these AI robots, and essentially they were cleaning robots. So it was a video from like above. They had the robots were scrubbing toilets, were cleaning the sink, cleaning off the counter. And my first thought was, well, I need to be in the room to see if they're actually doing a quality job, because those are just things where, like, I'd never think of AI like a robot be like, instead of a human cleaning a bathroom, like a public bathroom or anything. But if the productivity is there, just because it's productive, you still have to assess the quality, because if they're not doing a good job doing the cleaning, it's like it doesn't even matter with the productivity. It's not a quality product. So just a simple example that came across my eyes today.
Yeah, so if everybody's thinking about AI, I mean, really, the focus is going to be no different than it was with automation. Always automate the dumb, dirty, and dangerous activities in a company. So one of the things you could do as part of an initiative here is identify what's dumb, dirty, and dangerous, and then focus on automating or eliminating the human interaction with those activities. Okay. So the next question is, in lean thinking, we have this term called Gemba. And Gemba means the place where things are happening. I used to say where value is being created, but I was corrected by Mr. Rizzo Shingo. He says, no, just where things are happening. Okay. because who knows if there's any value created, I think was his point. So how often do you physically go where the work is being done to observe and learn? Like use your feet to be your eyes. In other words, walk there. Those are your eyes. Instead of relying on reports or meetings, and like anybody else, I became an engineer and I had an office right away. I loved it. And then I went to a lean company and my office was on the shop floor. I hated it. But that was all ego. It had nothing to do with delivering a great product to the customer. And I didn't have that passion. My passion was, hey, I'm the boss now. I went to all this schooling. I want to sit down in my comfy chair. Okay, so there's a whole different mindset you got to adopt. So again, the question is, how often do you go to the Gemba?
Well, you just say the answer, right? We need to be out there. We need to be there where the things are happening. And again, it's not about a product or a service. It doesn't matter. If you understand, the only way for you to understand the process is to live the process, right? If you are in our operations, go to the floor and watch. Just go and watch. If you are dealing with information, learn the process, live the process so you can see the waste because most of the processes they have lots of waste.
George, another dimension on this conversation, one of the things I've been involved in over the years is actually visiting best or better practice companies. And I've found those to be incredibly useful for those leaders, managers, manufacturing people who they've read about it, they've kind of read the books, but until they actually see it, is actually they say, now I know what you're talking about. And I think when not only going to the Gemba in your own organisation, but I'd be promoting the idea of actually getting into some of these really advanced, sophisticated organisations who have applied all the things we've been talking about and actually see it in action. And then when you come back into your workspace, you can say, now I can see what could be. I've found that over the years to be quite a powerful addition to all the other inputs that you might have in terms of making change inside your own workplace.
This call that we're on here is a really simple and not like no one's safety is at risk here, right? But I'd imagine if I wasn't on this call, I would have assumed the call happened. I would have assumed the call went great, and there was no opportunity for improvement. I noticed like when we're in the middle of conversations that the bing sound goes off when somebody joins the call in the middle of the discussion and the recording, right? Which perhaps there's a setting that we can adjust to make it so that the bing doesn't happen when people join and it doesn't affect editing or whatever might happen, right? But by being present on the call, I experienced it or I saw it or I heard it, right? But if you were never there, you would probably just assume everything's fine, right? So I don't know if that's a good example to use of what you'd miss if you weren't there, whether it's a big or a small opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, I think you got to define who your customer is and where do they live? Where's the Gemba? Right? And if you're working on a product that delivers value to this customer, well, you better be focusing your attention on the product. For a lot of companies who do software, well, they got to bring their customer into their software process. So sometimes bringing the customer to the Gemba is critical. So think of what you could do in your organization this week on that topic. All right, Tom.
Great companies improve by running small experiments and learning from them. What's one small, low-risk improvement you could test this week with your team?
So that's a great question. We're always trying to experiment something, try to discover new things, right? And yeah, again, it doesn't matter if it's operations or services or information. We need to try new things. Try to find the easiest, deliver what we need to deliver at the right time in the same in the exact amount, right? And it's an ongoing. Remember PDCA, right? You can try it, you can test it. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to the beginning. But that's continuous improvement, right? If you try new things, and little by little, remember 1% every day, improvement. That's the way it goes. So yes, it's a great approach. Try new things every day. Try to improve every day. It doesn't matter. We don't need to score big. Just little step, but solids.
Okay, I'm going to suggest something regarding improvement every day. So this is an interesting topic because you can improve a little bit every day and get nowhere as well. So what I really think people should be thinking about is creating a target condition with your customer and getting up one level from a strategic standpoint. So think of it like this. Shohei Ohtani hits the ball, but if you notice, every time he goes to the plate, he puts his bat down and he puts his feet on either side of the bat, and that's the starting point of his hitting routine. So he creates what's called a target condition. If he doesn't plant his feet in exactly the same spot, then there's variation involved. This is like quality at the source. He even goes to sleep, he uses the same pillow every night. So he gets a great night's sleep, and it's a custom-made pillow for him. He's built in that kind of security that, yes, this routine is in. Now I can worry about part of the process, not the entire process of hitting. So what are the items in your process that deliver value for your customer? List them, and then pick one of those and start improving towards a condition that says, I hit this condition, now I'm ready for the next one, and I'm going to get perfect at doing this. Striving for perfection is really one of the keys to lean thinking. Okay, the next question is, do the people who work with you today have more skills, confidence, and capability than when they first joined your team? So I invite you to think about this and how you could advance it. How could you move forward on identifying the answer to this question?
People development is crucial, and they do it in Toyota all the time. Uh, Train the people, prepare the people, because people is a big asset that most of the time money cannot buy. We can invest in equipment, automations, AI, but how do we invest in people for the long run? So it's very important to train the people, form the people, clear expectation also. Sometimes there's no clear expectation. And I seen, routines or information processes when they interact between different departments. They don't even have clear expectations, right? So there's no way they can deliver value to the customer if the expectations are not clear. And clear expectation is also part of the training, right? I know what I'm doing because I know what is needed on my next step in the process.
And maybe this is an opportunity for a promotion for having a coach in a company. I think that's one of the critical roles I think a coach plays. Is like any game, if you're playing footy or whatever sport you're into, you're in there playing the game every day. And yes, you're right. You need to have those skills in kicking and running, have those skills to being developed as part of developing the person. But also, I think having a coach who's actually watching over and actually going that next level and working side by side with the team out who are playing the game every day, I think that's where the value of the coach comes into play. And to answer your question at the beginning, George, I thought to myself, well, that's basically what I'm doing in my role as a coach when I'm working with companies. So lots of good examples, but standing back, I think it's a good opportunity to promote the idea of having that person who has that role in the organisation.
I was going to say, I think it's just important to, I just think it's important to make people feel empowered in their development. So, like, for example, outside of my coaching business, I do, in my consulting, I work on a psych unit. And so a lot of our staff, they're not, like, my responsibility is to do all the business development and then making sure that we have everything in place to admit the patients. And so since prior to me working in healthcare, I was working in health insurance. So I'm familiar and comfortable dealing with insurance companies. I know the language, but I have some staff members who they're doing case management where they're basically having to do reviews with the insurance to make sure that the patients are still continuing covered who need to stay in the hospital. And they're not as confident navigating the insurance world with the language. A lot of times a lot of times they just feel overwhelmed because of getting prior authorizations. I mean, bad enough American healthcare is that we could get on. I don't even want to get on that topic because we be on that all day. But there's just a lot of things you have to navigate in the American healthcare system, and it can be overwhelming for many people. So what I do is I make sure that when I'm trying to help people feel empowered to be able to navigate those that world. I'm sitting beside them. I'm giving them tasks to do. Correcting them. I'm usually demonstrating through modeling, like my process. So it's to the point where I have a verbal process, and then I also have a process that I've had to literally write down word for word, step by step for people to follow, just so that they can get a little bit more comfortable with being able to navigate that insurance world so that they can feel confident and so that they feel empowered. So I make it my duty to do that because what I don't like feeling, it's it's good to feel needed where you can't, if it's almost like I sometimes you can't function when I'm not in place. But at the same time, that's not a good thing because if you can't do something without me being there, there's a breakdown in the process. And I'd rather um, help people feel empowered about navigating and managing the process so that I could be replaced. And so it doesn't necessarily have to feel like I need to be there.
Another thought on this too is I feel like there's sort of a way of doing things in every organization where it's the people that you hire, the way that you train, the way that you implement continuous improvement, the way that you uh, embrace mistakes or failures, and how do leaders um, treat those opportunities? Like, do they blame others or outside factors or customers, or do they say, "Oh, here's something that there was an oversight, or I didn't predict this would happen," or is there in the moment coaching or weekly coaching or mentorship? What are all the systems and the framework that provide all the systems and the support that enable people to feel comfortable and safe to try something that's not the status quo, learn from mistakes, um, something even just Harada, having all the forms that you can rely on if you feel like you stall. You have the system to fall back on or use every day consistently so that you continually are growing and getting stronger and better because you want to do it and you want to serve others. So it comes down to your purpose and your mindset. And there's so many different factors that it probably can't list them all. And in every organization, there's going to be a different list, right? So I think it's about creating that environment for people to be able to perform and feel the desire to improve.
So the next question, and we're covering this a lot, but as leaders, we all really want to leave a legacy, don't we? If you left your role tomorrow, what positive habits or behaviors would you continue would continue at your business because of the culture you've helped build?
Well, I can start with, I know, I'll take it back to my work at the hospital. I know that if I leave tomorrow, the most important thing that I would want them to recognize is lead follow up. And because we will get social psychiatric unit, and so we'll get patients, we'll get referrals from hospitals, we'll get referrals from nursing facilities since we have an older adult in unit, and then we also get referrals from patients that are following up into coming into the hospital. Now, ideally, you would think that, so we have a crisis unit where that sees the patients who need psychiatric treatment. They do the assessment, determine if the patient needs to be admitted. Now, just because you come to our hospital to be evaluated for behavioral health does not automatically mean you're going to be admitted to our behavioral health unit, because what they're doing is the crisis unit is looking for who's responding the fastest. So if our unit is, if they send they're going to always refer to our unit first. But if you don't follow up within a certain period of time, the patient's going to be sent out of the hospital. And so you don't follow up long enough, whether that's patients coming in the hospital, it's bad enough you have patients coming in the hospital that can be sent out. But imagine if you're referring from another place, if you don't follow up quickly, you want to lose patients, and it end up having to be it's to be an empty unit, and then the hospital's not going to be doing well. So ultimately, following up on referrals and actually reviewing it in a timely manner rather than, as soon as it comes in, you want to look at it within the first 30 minutes to an hour, because within an hour, you might lose the patient if you're doing something else instead of like reviewing that referral. So just making sure that there's an urgency with, as a lead comes in or a patient comes in, it has to be reviewed immediately, not just like sitting on it for a couple hours, then get into it when you get to it.
Well, I hope you're on shift to overcome into your hospital, Vance. I wouldn't like to be there when those other colleagues are on shift.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the world of, I think that mental health, when you're working in the mental health space, it's unlike any other healthcare space, because you really have, I always joke with my friends and colleagues where you can truly have a case that's one of one, where you'll see it and then you'll never see it ever again, because of all the different social factors. There's social factors. There's sometimes you might have some medical conditions going on. You got an involuntary, then you have voluntary patients. There's all different dynamics that sometimes I've seen people who you might be living, kind of going through life 30 years, and then, year 31, you hit this realization that, oh my goodness, I've been doing this thing called life all the wrong way, because I've been, I haven't dealt with this trauma that's happened in the past. So there's all these different factors that go into it. But that being said, you have to be able to assess those factors. Again, meds, previous history. You have to be able to assess all these different factors within that 30 minutes to an hour. Because the reality is, though there aren't, every hospital does not have a psychiatric unit, there's enough of them where if you don't look at it promptly, you will lose the patient.
Yeah, that's excellent, Vance. And lose them might actually mean lose the patient. So,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
And seriously, it really could be. It
yeah,
really could be,
Yeah.
because for some of these patients, I've seen patients where you come to our hospital, you might have already been through the assessment, but if you're waiting 3 hours to get an acceptance on if you're going to be admitted to the unit or not, it can be a point of frustration where you're coming in, you're depressed, you're looking for help. I've seen patients get frustrated and then, you walk out, or you just leave out of the emergency room. And so that really can be a life or death situation for some patients. So you're spot on with that.
Wonderful. So I wanna wrap this up by giving everybody one question to answer. And we know, like, learning comes in a couple forms. You can learn and have knowledge learning. You read it in a book, right? A bee is black and yellow, I think, still. Okay, knowledge learning, but experiential learning is a little different. So acting on that knowledge is different, and it's definitely harder. So I'm going to ask our listeners, what one specific action will you take this week to grow as a leader? And I'll leave you with an answer from each of our hosts, our guests. Just introduce yourself again and say what you would do this week to grow as a leader. I open it up, and I want to thank you guys for joining the Leadership Excellence Podcast. Who wants to start? Dr. Vance Cooper, go ahead.
No, the one specific action was actually something that we talked about a little earlier in the week, where I'm spending time each day reading, like just consciously taking. I said I want to read an hour each week. Just kind of started off with baby steps, and so that means I have to read at least 10 minutes per day. So I've been doing that since Monday, and I think that's what I'll say. I definitely have to get back in more of a routine of reading on a regular basis. So that's my first step in that process, just reading 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, congratulations. And I've seen your pictures posted in our app with your tea, and that's your celebration. You have a celebratory non-caffeine tea after you finish reading, which is amazing. Okay, who's next?
Nice.
Yes.
So my action for this week is being on the side of the customer, and understand their needs, so I can adjust and really add value according to customer expectation. And what I mean is, in this service product like the OW64 app, that we provide service, but I don't know if we are fully understanding what is customer expecting or what is customer requirements. So that's going to be my Gemba walk for this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Who's next?
I could go next. I'm going to copy Jose. I'm going to embrace the passion for the customer spirit. I've got 2 calls booked on Friday that is new for me, where I'm basically going to be asking and learning about their company and what their problems are and what they're looking for as solutions, whether we can help them or not, and just try to learn as much as I can about them and understand them to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Kyle. Who's next?
George, mine's similar, it's down a similar track, but in my situation, it's more about the people I'm coaching. I think for me is to redouble my listening skills, and really keep that front of mind. And I think that's probably the thing I can work on. And I think I'm doing it well now, but I think you can always improve. You can always improve. And for me, it's that redoubling that focus on what the person I'm talking with, what they're saying, and also what they're really saying.
What they're saying and what they mean. Wow.
Yeah.
Good, Brenton. Very good. I think that's everybody. Tom, do you want to share one thing you're going to do this week?
Yeah, I've started to, like Vance, I've started to read a lot more. Every day I'm trying to read more on strategy. I know I'm a nerd, but I'm reading more on strategy, and so I read every day to
Nice.
better myself.
So you're going to build that up. That's great. Okay, and what am I doing? Well, guess what? I started this week. I got some feedback, which was 9.5 out of 10. And then I asked, what could I do better? Well, George, I wanted to share everything before you shared this. And so I put this on my computer Do not cut people off. It's a note. I will never cut anybody off again. So I'm starting that. Hopefully, I do a good job of continuing that process. Okay, well, hopefully our audience got something out of this, and please do something this week. Don't just know something. Do something about it. Get the experience and how difficult it is sometimes to move forward in satisfying your customers. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We hope this episode gave you something practical to apply this week.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for this episode of Leadership Excellence Podcast. And remember, if you want the 75 leadership lesson set, all you have to do is go to ow64.com and download our app. Join myself and Dr. Tom Lawless next time for more essential discussion on this topic.